So now we're gonna build some interactions based on this example 5, and I have copied that as example 6, and I have changed this environment and pointing to example 6. So now for the time being, this example 6 is exactly the same as example 5. Let's just test it. So I'm going to test it so it's exactly the same as example 5. Close it, close the package, okay, close the page. Alright, so inside the first is that let's revisit this in init.py. Alright, so in this py, so what we did is that, so by the way, I don't need to have this import OS because I'm not going to use the OS method to detect the path. So I don't need that. Right, the other is that I'm going to rearrange something about this. So actually this initiating the browser can be put at the very end. There's nothing wrong to put it there. So that we're going to keep it neat, that we have 3 parts: import modules, decorate the modules, and then render the whatever, and do something for that. So this one is basically to render this index page. Alright, so in between we have a lot of things that we've shown the case that you can have a lot of nicknames for the home page, but we're going to keep it neat now, and we're only going to indicate that whether it is a slash or slash index, that will be the home page. That's good enough. So there is nothing to change here. It's just that the first is that we're gonna render the index page, all right? And this index page actually is based on the template which is in this front end. Inside we have a web page template, and there is this file called index and index.html. So the top parts will be the same. Right, so it's gonna load some libraries, and later it is gonna have a title to say this is from the page, and then it's gonna load a JavaScript called a make element. So the first time I'm gonna change it, I'm gonna remove this part. Alright, so the second is that I'm also gonna change the contents in this make element, which is in this JS. I'm gonna open this make element. So that one is simply making an H1, but this time I'm gonna change that by adding more components. So this time I'm gonna add more things, and I'm gonna use the D3 syntax because it's handy. But it would be the same if you're gonna use plain JavaScript to create those HTML components. So basically what I did is that I add a label and input box with the idea of keywords so that it can input the keywords. Then I create a button, and then following that I have a message box to display whatever I want to display there. So with all of these changes, so what is going to happen? So basically I'm going to have this init to render the contents from this index.html, and in this index.html I'm going to load some libraries from jQuery and D3, and then I'm going to load this load and run the JavaScript make element. In this make element I'm going to make a bunch of HTML components. All right, so with all of that, let's just launch it. So now the page looks like this. Alright, so it launched the index page. It has a label, and I can insert a keyword somewhere and submit it if I add actions, and then I'm gonna show some messages here. Okay, I changed a little bit here, is that instead I have the default word like keyword A1, keyword 2. Okay, so what I'm doing here, so actually what I'm doing here is that I'm going to say that, okay, from this which is called the front end, I can enter the keywords like keyword 1 or keyword 2, and then I'm going to submit this request, right? for this keyword 1 and keyword 2. And then hopefully that I can run this JavaScript to send this request. This is called a request to the backend somewhere, right? Then in the backend, so Python is going to catch the request and do something and prepare a response and send it back so that I can display the messages here. So that's what I'm going to do. So all of the following actions should happen when I click the submit button. Right? So we need to go back to this JavaScript and specify the actions after clicking this button. Alright, so to assign an action after clicking the submit button, we have to find this button, the JavaScript we have in this make element. And here we're going to specify that on click, so if this one is clicked, then we're going to do something. And basically what we are going to run in a sync function called send request and get response. So that will be the function. So for now, this function has not been created. And we're going to add this function into the tools in this modules D3. So because previously we have an example to show that we can run some JavaScript from this modules D3, and now we can replace that with a function called send request and get response. Alright, so we're going to set up a function here. So basically it's going to do something by sending a request when the button is clicked and to get the response from there. Yeah. So basically that's what we want to do. But let's just go back to this index template and remember that to run the script in this module D3, we need to load it first. So I'm going to uncomment this line so that when this template of index is rendered, it's going to load both the script of make element as well as the script in this modules D3. Okay, so now let's go back. If we launch this server and this page, and we'll see exactly the same thing. And so we're going to click that, but nothing is going to happen because we haven't defined what the action should be. Actions should be taken within this function. So let's start from this. The first is that we're going to catch the values within this component, which is called an input field. So this is achieved by this line. It says that, well, let's have the keywords. Let's have the keywords from this input component with an ID called keywords. This is which is basically this is defined in this make elements. I said I want to add an input with the ID of keywords. All right. Yeah. So of course you can change the values here, but I'm just going to use the default values in, so for the time being. So basically this line is a D3 in syntax. It is to get the keywords, the values like this keyword 1 and 2 into this variable called keyword. So now I have the keyword, right? So the next is that I'm going to pack it as a JSON, and that JSON is going to be sent back to the backend. Right. So the second part is I'm going to make a JSON, and based on this, so basically I'm going to make a JSON like a dictionary. So with the field called the request data from frontend, which is the key of this field, and then I'm going to have the values in this keywords as the string to send it back. So now I have packet. It's just like I have packeted as a JSON, so as to get it ready to send back to the backend. Well, so before we send it back, before sending back, so we're going to do something is like I want to check what will be sent back. So I'm going to display this data this request data in the div in this message box here. However, I cannot. Well, so the so I cannot show the JSON itself as an object in a div, so I have to convert that into a string by this JSON stringify, right? So, and also I'm going to make it a paragraph as an HTML paragraph, so I'm going to add something. Basically, so this one will be the HTML string, and I'm going to put that into this div to display it, right? So basically, to this part, I haven't sent it to the backend yet, but I'm going to show this JSON file as a string in this div box. Alright, so now I relaunch it again, and with this settings, I'm going to submit this button, and it should catch the values here and display it in this message box. Okay, so following the things I want to have, and in it has a prompt to say the request data sent to backend will be like this, which is in a JSON format, but actually the contents displayed here is a string. Alright, so the next is that we're going to send it to the backend. So we're going to define the URL as the backend. Remember, this backend is not a physical page, it is a virtual page. Okay, so it can be named as backend or process or whatever you want to name it, but I think this backend name is more intuitive. So the next is that we're going to construct a jQuery ajax syntax to send a post of this request data. And it's pretty simple. It's just like we're going to have this URL here. We're going to say that the type of this ajax is a post. It's not a get. So it is not a get. The data for this page is to post something, to this page. Okay. So and then we're going to specify that the type is a JSON or application, and we're going to send the string. So remember that for this ajax, we're not going to send the JSON itself. Instead, we're going to send the string. It's a stringified JSON string. Alright, so far we have sent a request to the backend, and the backend should be in this virtual page called the backend, right? So the next is that we should do something on the backend, and this is like we have to create a virtual page for this backend, right? This should be done by a Python. It's just like what we have done before. Like remember going back to the example 2, for example. So we're going to use this page 1 to do something for this page 1, or this page 2 to do something for this page 2. So that would be the same concept, but let's just copy that part. Actually, it's pretty much the same. So let's just copy this page1.py and put it here in the folder of this example 6. We're going to paste it. All right. So, but just this time we're going to call that backend. Well, yeah. So actually, it does not matter. So, what name you're going to call? Let's just change that to backend. Okay. So the same thing is that it says that we're going to import flask, but this time we're not going to import from this main, right? So actually we're going to import that from example 06, which is the whole package as we said before, right? All right. So and then we're going to decorate that by directed to, this time it's called backend, right? Just to the corresponding to the JavaScript and the ajax request. And so we're gonna go to this part. So then we're going to do something. Of course we're going to return something, but I'm just going to leave it blank there. And here it is not called do something in page 1, but instead I'm going to rename it as do something at backend. But actually, it does not matter what it is. All right. Okay, so that's pretty much that we want to do. But to catch that the data sent from the front end, we're going to need a package called request from a package called request, and that one is from, sorry, this is wrong. So we're going to need from the flask, we need a package called the request. Okay, so let's just recap it again. So the first is that we're going to, from this flask, we're going to import this request. Then from this package, we're going to inherit this app flask, which has been which has been created in this init file. All right. So okay. So let's go back to this backend. So the second is that for this route to this page, we need to specify that we will need we'll need to tell Python that we will use the method called post. Okay, this is very important because in this page we can treat some request that posted from the front end. So we have to specify it here. So I'm gonna put a mark here to say that it is a must to specify the methods of post. So actually you have multiple methods, like you can have a get or post, but here we're gonna just handling the post, so we're just gonna have this post here, right? So then in the request thing, and it's doing something. So now we have rendered page. We have so we have point to this page, right? But we need to do something with the request of the data, right? So before request, the first thing we need to do is to get the request data. So this is done by a method called getJSON. So because we are sending an ajax, and the sendover stuff or the package is a JSON, so we're going to use the method called getJSON. All right. So online you might find different approaches. Like sometimes people are going to use a form instead of the ajax method to submit the stuff in this form. So in that case, you will need to use a different method called form, and you're going to catch the values for each items in that form. Yeah, each input field in that form. But anyway, so I'm just going to put a comment here. But in our case, it will be more flexible to use this ajax method. So we're gonna use this ajax getJSON method, right? So then we're gonna specify that we're gonna force to receive a JSON. So regardless in the front end, so let's just go back to the front end, to that ajax thing. Yeah, so in the ajax we said that we're gonna post a request as a JSON, but sometimes maybe you're not posting that as a JSON, whatever. Just to be standardized and to simplify, here we're gonna say that whatever you received, even if it is string, treat that as a JSON. All right, so that's this force true option does. All right, so then of course in this we can print what the data looks like from the front. Oh, sorry. So before that, and then we know this method, and then we're gonna have a variable to catch the value from this getJSON. So we're gonna call that. So how about, let's say that we're gonna have this request data from front end, which is a JSON, and this is using the request method called JSON to get it and force it to be a JSON file, right? So the next is that if you want, you can print it out to see that the data received from the front end is whatever, so you can display that JSON file. But I'm just going to comment that. Yeah. Okay. So the next is that now you have a JSON, right? Then remember that in the JSON file we received from the front end is like index. Let's just go here. So it is a stringified file representing a JSON like this. So actually it has a key. The key is called the requested data from front end, and it has a value, which are the keywords, which are keyword 1 and keyword 1, keyword 1 and keyword 2 as a string, right? So that would be the JSON file. So here when we catch it, so it will be the same JSON. So it's going to have a key. Let's just go back. Yeah. So if you display that here, it will be like this, right? And now we're going to get the string from this keywords, because that's the part that we want to handle. All right. So that part is actually a string, right? It's like so I'm just going to change that. In my case, it would be like keyword 1, keyword 2. That is the string, right? So the next is that we're going to get the string of this part using the request, and this is the JSON, and we're going to get the value from this key. Okay, this is the JSON way. This is the Python way of get a value, from an object by this key. So I have a comment here because it is really confusing, because in JavaScript and in Python there are different ways to get a value from a key. In JavaScript it works like if you say this dot this, but it does not work in Python. Anyway, so this will be the string, and the string now is so I'm just going to put a comment here. So now it is like this part. Okay, so the string is like this. All right. So of course now we can do something. For example, we can split that into a list of 2 words and do something and use the Python language to handle this data. But in this case, I'm just going to simplify that, and I'm just going to prepare a response string based on this. So I'm going to say that I'm going to have a response string, and the response string is like a response string from backend is this. Okay. Yeah. So how about let's change that. So after receiving the request, keywords. How about that? And then I have this keywords 1 and keywords 2, right? I'm going to send it back as I'm going to send back the string. So the next is that now I have the string. I have to pack that as a JSON to send it back. So the next part is to pack it as a JSON, to make a response JSON. So I'm going to have this response data JSON from backend .json basically. So I'm just going to have a key which is called response data from backend, and then I have the response string here. So that will be the JSON that I'm going to send back. Right? But I cannot send the JSON as an object. I have to send it as a stringified string. So I'm gonna stringify this JSON, and we're gonna use the JSON method called the dumps, right? So there are different ways. The Flex is gonna offer to have this. I think it is called a JSONify. But so online I found out that that one is not always right. So I'd rather go back to this fundamental way of JSON.dumps. But to use that, I need to import the JSON package from Python. Right. So now I have stringified the JSON into a string, and it is the string that I'm gonna send back. Okay, so now return what? I'm going to return this. That would be the thing that I'm going to do in this backend.py. Oh, by the way, so you have different ways like this. This helps to check whether the stringified thing is a string. So this is the syntax you can test here. Alright, so basically that's what I want to do with this this backend py, and that one is gonna receive the request and do something and make a response JSON and stringify it and return it, right? And this part will be catched by the front end, then it's gonna have the response there, right? So now I have this backend py ready, but I need to go back to the initial py to make a link so that it knows that it should also load this backend when needed. Right? So going back here, I need to add a line as we did in, for example, in this example 2. If you go to the main, you will see that I need to import this page 1 and page 2, right? So it's the same concept here, that in this init py, I need to import this backend.py. All right, so I'm gonna put it here because it is part of the it is part of the importing process. So I'm gonna say from example 06, right? Import backend.py. So now it is connected. So this initial one is gonna it is gonna create it is gonna render the components to build that index page, and it knows that when necessary, when you want to visit this backend, it's gonna load the modules, load the things in this backend py. And in this backend py, basically it's gonna do something like it is gonna have this app, and then it's gonna go to this page, and it's gonna do something to catch the request, prepare a response, and send it back. So I have to correct. So like when I import this, I just have to say backup. I cannot say .py, otherwise it's going to cause a syntax error. All right, so with all of this setting, I try to launch it again to see how it works, but I have this error. It says that it cannot find this app flags when I try to load this, import this app flags. The problem is that in this init py, I have this line here, so I load this backend py before creating this app flask. So that's not work. So I have to like bring it down to here. All right, so that the order matters. Okay, so I'm gonna have a note here to say that so that part has to be after creating this app flask. Anyway, so with that, I'm gonna test that again, and now it brings up Okay, so now I have this input field. I can have this string. I'm gonna submit it, and it's gonna go back. At the same time, it's gonna show me the message here, right? And actually, so it has been a response has been prepared, and have been sent back. I just have to catch it in that ajax part again. So I'm gonna go to this ajax part, which is in this modules, right? So remember last time we said that we're gonna post it, and we post this request string, and after that actually we can add one more step to say that if it is successful, then you're gonna do something. Yeah, so basically the contents is like if it is successful, then you're gonna do something, right? So for example, we can say so if it is successful, then you will have this response data JSON, and you can use the console log to show it in the console in the browser. But at the same time that we can also show that in this box, right? So to do that, the first is that we need to convert this subject. Okay, so let's just give just have an heads up. So like in this, when I send the response back, remember I send it as a string. It is a stringified JSON file, right? So however, despite that it was sent as a string, but in this ajax method, when it receive it, it is gonna automatically turn that into a JSON file. All right. So the data I received is a JSON, despite that the data I sent was a stringified JSON, which is a string. All right. So I have this JSON. And then I have to convert that into a string again by stringify it, so as to display that in a div. Okay. So, but before, so now I'm going to update the contents in this message box, but I don't want to lose the existing string or HTML code here. So I'm gonna first I'm gonna store the existing HTML string, which is this part. And then after that, I'm going to make a new string by concatenate the existing string with something new, which is the response data. Okay, it's like this. It is like this. So now it's going to have two paragraphs. In addition to the existing paragraph, for the request data, I'm going to have a response data as a second paragraph, right? And then I'm going to update the HTML by find that message box again and put the HTML inside. All right, so that's basically what I'm going to do. So I'm going to stop that, clean it up, close this page, and launch this again. Okay. So I have this keyword 1, 2, submitted, and it's going to show that the request data is this keyword 1 and 2, and then it's going to go back, and the Python in this backend is going to catch it. It's going to prepare a response data, and it's going to send it back and display it here. So this one shows the interaction by sending a request from the front end and receive it in the back end. Okay, so we can update that again, and let's say that this time I'm going to have 3, for example, keyword 3, submit. You will see that the data has been automatically updated and send it back, and with the corresponding response string prepared and sent back to the front end. Okay, so with this, and now we know that we can send something from the front end, and going to the back end, we can ask Python, Python to do something on it. So this is a simple case. It just prepare an additional string, but we can do more. For example, with this keyword, we can go back and search for a file, and with this keyword and find that portion that and bring it back and display it here, right? So, and there are more things we can do, like we can use this text and we can do some machine learning analysis of that text and to bring back the findings, so the results of analysis, okay, which will be done in the following examples.